And welcome everybody. I'm sure there are some here that I've seen before, either in the Juno Slack community or in one of the other talks that I've given. But either way, it's very nice to meet you all. And I hope that I can give you a little bit of enlightenment as to being a creative director, what it means right now, what it's meant in the past, and what I think it's going to mean going forward in the future. And the title of this is So You Think You Want to Be a Creative Director. And I understand that that's potentially a little bit pessimistic. And really what I want to do is make sure that you come out of this going, yes, I absolutely want to do this. And I understand the differences in the different types of creative directorship. And I know a little bit more, if not exactly, where I want to go. So the agenda today, what we're going to focus on, we're going to have a look at attitude. We're going to have a look at what was, what is, and what will be. We're going to have a look at differences, the different types of creative director roles. And then we're going to have a look at your role, the role of a creative director in its sort of most general sense, at the core of what it is. But before any of that, who the hell am I and what the hell am I doing being here telling you lot about being a creative director? Well, I'm Adam. I am a strategic executive creative leader. I have realized elite products, experiences, and campaigns for the world's strongest brands for the best part of the last 30 years. Last year, I led multiple teams launching a digital physical hybrid product for Ancestry, a visionary roadmap, multi-year roadmap for Dolby, redesigning the customer success ecosystem for Salesforce, and many, many more. Over the years, I've worked on more than 150 digital campaigns for the movie studios like 20th Century Fox and Paramount Pictures, on movies like the X-Men series, Die Hard, Star Wars, Deadpool, to name just a few. I have worked pretty much every creative discipline at creative leadership level, with the exception of experiential. So I can talk to you about all of those different disciplines and what it means to be a creative director, both agency and client side. And that's why I'm here. And I'm very happy to take you through this talk and then answer any questions that you have. If you have questions as we're going through, like Eva said, please feel free to drop them in the comments, but there will be a Q&A section at the end, so I can kind of dive into those and answer them then, or answer any questions that you might have for me. So let's kick this off then. Let's talk about attitude. When I say to you, think of a picture or a photograph of a creative director, what is the pose that you are seeing when you think of a creative director? It's probably this, right? Funky hair, glasses, arms crossed. I'm probably smiling a bit too much in this photo to be a typical creative director, but this is what we think of. But what does that really actually say about the attitude of a creative director? When we think about a creative director, of course, they have to be creative. The clue is in the title. And they have to be a leader. They have to understand how to encourage and support and motivate their team and the clients. So they have to be knowledgeable in their specific creative discipline, but also generally as a storyteller. How do they elicit an emotional response? Be that getting a team rallied around a project or a brief, or getting that a client inspired by a solution that you're pitching to them. But I would say this isn't the totality of what the attitude set for a creative director should be. I think the ultimate creative director attitude set also includes authenticity, being authentic with your team, with your leadership, with your client, and with yourself. Because at the end of the day, we're all humans interacting with other humans, no matter whether they are reporting directly to you, no matter whether they're the same level as you from an organizational structure point of view, no matter whether they're your leadership or your clients, you're still human to human. So we need to approach being a creative director in whatever discipline it is, I believe, from a human to human leadership perspective. With that in mind, then, let's have a look at what was, what is, and what will be. CDs are not like they once were. The unquestionable God sitting on their throne at the back of the creative studio, raining down upon the rest of the team. And that's a good thing. It's a good thing that we have finally come away from that. Because the old school was this authority figure, must not be questioned, knows everything, their word is God. We moved away from that. That was, I would say, sort of 50s through 60s, 70s into the 80s. And then as we came into the 90s, there was a shift in tone, but they still had the final say. So you could ask them, you could approach them with ideas. They were maybe starting to get open to that. but they would still land like a ton of bricks if their view was the one that they wanted to push forward. And where we are now with most creative directors, the here and now is they're a multidisciplinary creative. They're not just, in the past, it would be you're a creative director that's come from a copywriting background or from an art background. Now CDs are multidisciplinary, and they need to have that experience as much as possible, because the likelihood is, as a creative director, you'll be working across multiple disciplines, or at least with team members from multiple creative disciplines. But the key thing is, at the moment, and this has always been the case, you as a creative director will be overworked. You will be stressed. And that doesn't matter whether you're agency or client side. And it's something that we need to fix. So the ideal then that we want to get to for creative leadership are true creative leaders. And those are people who are empowering leaders that are working human to human, always remembering I'm a human, I'm dealing with humans. And what do I mean by that? Well, if we're talking about working with your team, for example, if someone is usually happy, cheerful, go-lucky, and they join in and they're enthusiastic and insightful in what they bring to the projects and the tables, and then slowly they lose their shine, they lose their spark. Maybe they start to have interpersonal clashes with other people on the team. What you need to understand there is a cause for that change in that person. That human, maybe they had an argument that morning, maybe they pranged their car on the way into work, maybe they were running late, maybe they haven't got the promotion they wanted, whatever it might be, there's a reason for that change in behavior. So you, as their leader and as a human, should try and work with them to understand what it is and help support them through it. And that's what I mean by an empowering leader working human to human. It's important when we think about creative directors to think about the differences. There is a core set of skills, a core approach that a creative director has, but you might need to tailor that, because your role as a creative director will differ depending on where you are and how you're working. And this might seem really, really obvious as I'm saying this to you right now, but I guarantee you that it will be a surprise when it happens, and probably not just the first time it happens, but multiple times it happens as well. What do I mean? Well, let's have a look at freelance creative directors versus full-time employment creative directors. As a freelancer, you're project-based. You are mainly there for your craft. You are mainly there for your creative skills, the vision that you bring, the strategic thinking that you bring, and probably a good dose of art direction for the rest of the team as well. As a contractor, i.e. an ongoing contractor, a long-term contractor, someone that is not a full-time employee, but maybe you're there for 6 months, 12 months, something like that. You're there to run the team and keep the clients happy and roll your sleeves up and do some work as well. It's a combination, it's an extension of the freelance, but you still have the time and the duty of doing some of the work, doing some of the creative work, using your skills in a creative capacity. When you go full-time, you're a team leader. Your primary focus, I would say probably 97 to 98% of your time, is on the non-practitioner duties. So things like leading your team, making your clients feel good and coming back with repeat business, making everything run smoothly, ensuring all the processes are in place. It's also things like understanding a budget. How do you put a pitch together from a financial perspective? How do you understand what resources you're going to need to provide the solution that answers your client's brief? All of that is to say most of your time will be doing things other than what you have been doing for the rest of your career, i.e. your creative craft. You might have to create the odd scamp every now and again. You might have to give a little bit of creative direction every now and again. But there are going to be long periods of time where you're not. And your main focus is going to be people management, client management, budget management, resource management. You're going to be responsible for project delivery. You're going to be responsible for creative output and the quality of creative output. And for many creatives, that comes as a shock. It comes as a surprise. Because as we work through our career as a creative, we've come out of college, or we've learned on the job, or we've self-taught our skills, our craft, and we've been practicing that. We've been heads down, working on it. making the best piece of art that we can. And then at the weekends and the evenings, we've been doing personal projects to get all of our creative expression out, which is amazing and brilliant and absolutely the thing that we should do. And then suddenly at some point we get promoted and we become maybe a CD or a CD. And then we have these duties land on our plate, leading teams. And suddenly you've got a bunch of humans in front of you, all with problems, and they need and look to you for solving them. So I want to make sure that we understand that these differences, sort of sliding up this scale from freelance creative director through to long-term contract, through to full-time employee, and what they mean. But they're not the only differences. There's also a really big difference from a creative director working at an agency or working client side. When you're at an agency, I kind of like to describe it as a plate of spaghetti in the most fun sense. It is, what I mean by that is it's this hugely diverse range of projects. You're going to work it with multiple clients, so multiple brands, multiple tone of voice, multiple platforms, multiple objectives, and one day will never be the same as the next. You're going to lead multidisciplinary teams of creative professionals at an agency. You're going to be working with planners. You're going to be working with copywriters. You're going to be working with videographers. You're going to be working with stylists, with photographers. And then the client is also going to have multidisciplinary teams as well. And you need to plug yourself into those like this. You need to be thinking super fast because it is an ultra fast-paced work environment. That comes with heavy stress in most agency life. And that seems to be a given. It seems to be part of agency life. Should it be? That's a different question to answer, but that's what the reality is right now. You're going to be responsible for timely delivery of creative output. That's all going to be on your shoulders as well. So this fast-paced, high stress is balancing out that fun side of multiple different briefs. There's different days mean different pieces of work, different projects. So all of that combined, when you think about it, what it comes down to is epic client management. And by clients, I mean internal and external. It's not just the end client that you're working for. You've also got clients internally. And when you start to think in terms of client management, when you're looking at your team, they're also your clients. You're there to help them. You're there to support them, to nurture them, to empower them, to let them grow and do their best work. That's part of client management, exactly as you would with an end client or even your leadership. And when we look at a creative director role from a client side perspective, I describe that more as a bowl of rice. So if a plate of spaghetti, when you look at it, it's all of the different pieces of pasta interwoven, all moving in different ways, all mixed up together. It doesn't seem to be any order in there. It's just chaos. And when you look at a bowl of rice, you have all of these small pieces, all in different directions, all pointing in different angles. But more or less, they're one cohesive set, one cohesive ball that kind of works together. Yes, it's a bit messy. Yes, there's some things that need to be sorted out. But in comparison to a plate of spaghetti, there's much more structure. There's much more order. And I think those are the best visual metaphors for the difference between agency and client side. As a client-side creative director, you're going to be focused more often than not on a single brand or a single organization. So you're going to be able to deeply immerse yourself into that brand or that organization. It's going to be up to you to maintain a creative consistency from project to project. And that might be anything from an advertising campaign through to a product launch, through to internal communications. You need to ensure there is that creative consistency across all of those touch points or all of those projects. In order to do that, you're going to need to master cross-departmental collaboration. It's an absolute necessity for a creative director working client side. You're going to have to align the creative teams with the business goals and with the goals of other departments as well. Marketing's goals are not going to be the same as creative's goals. However, those two departments, their goals should be in line with the business goals. Ultimately, working client side is a fantastic opportunity for you to foster long-term change. Agency side, you can do that, but it's few and far between because most campaigns are, 3 months long, 6 months long at the most. Maybe a brand relaunch is slightly longer, but still they're a very short time span. And when you work client side, you're working on something that has a much longer roadmap. So I hope those two go to highlight the little bit of the difference between working as a creative director, agency side, and client side. The important thing, I think, is to understand that either way, you are a connector. If you think about team members like this, you have starters. Starters are the kinds of creatives who you can give the brief to, and you can give rough boundaries, rough guidelines, and then you put them in the room and you say, okay, go away, concept something for me, come up with an amazing concept, come up with some core nugget of an idea that's going to kick all of this off, and they'll be fantastic at it. But when you look at them as a team member, what they can do is start the start and end the start. They don't necessarily get the thing launched. What you need for the thing to be launched are finishers. Those are people who can't just sit in a room with just a brief and come up with something, but they're fantastic at taking the core idea that the starters have come up with, starting the finish and finishing the finish, as in finding all the nuts and bolts, putting it all together, getting it actually propped from an idea into reality and launched and up and running. And it's your job as the creative director to bridge those two, to connect those two, to be the overlap of those two, to ensure that both of those groups do their best work, and you can help herald the change, the transition from the starters to the finishers. And that leads really nicely into what your role as a creative director is. Like I've said, you're a connector. So between those starters and those finishers, for example, but you're also a connector between your creative team and the wider organization, be that client side or agency side. You're the one that is the filter, the spokesperson for your team to the rest of the business. That might be to other departments, it might be to your leadership. So you have to figure out, how do I share information both ways? Let's say you're talking with your leadership and they tell you something, and 50% of what they tell you is privileged information that at the moment the rest of the company shouldn't be hearing, but you as part of the senior leadership team need to understand. So you have to work out, what can I filter down to my team that is relevant, that is helpful, that is supportive? And if you look at that the other way around, how do you take what your team is telling you and bring that to your leadership in order to affect change or support for your team? Your leadership are not going to want to know the minutiae of the day-to-day troubles of your team. They're going to want you to figure that out. That's what you're employed for. But they are going to want to know the opportunities for growth that are going to help the business overall. Likewise, you're also a connector between your leadership and the creative team, like I've just spoken about. You're also a connector between your goals and your client goals. And by your goals, I mean the goals of your business, the goals of what you want your team to achieve, the goals of what each of your team members want to achieve, and your own personal goals as well. They're all intertwined, they're all interlinked. So as a creative director, agency or client side, freelance or full-time, you're there to really make these connections. On a project by project basis, it's the connection between the idea and the brief. How do you respond to that brief? How do you produce work that is going to be world-class, that is going to sell the thing you need to sell, or the product or the service, or is going to create the brand recognition that the client is after? How do you connect those dots? As a leader, it's how do you understand, okay, I've got this amazing team here and they're really talented, and these are the business goals. I can see that the skills that this team have here, if we emphasize those just that little bit, that's going to really help boost success within the goals for the business. Always, always, always about connection. So when we look at that and we think about connection and the role as a creative director, roughly speaking, it comes down into these topics. You're going to have to build an amazing team. You might inherit a team, but at some point you're going to have to build that out. So how do you spot who you need on your team? How do you hire to agency goals? How do you understand who is a good fit on paper, but when you're starting to interview them, what do you look out for to make sure they're actually going to be a good fit with the rest of your team? You're also going to need to understand how to be an effective leader. That means things like, how do you give feedback that actually lands, that people actually take on board, that people feel is respectful, that people feel heard in terms of what you are responding to? As creatives, we put heart and soul into our work, even on the projects that we don't like, even with the clients that we don't like, even with the work that we're not 100% aligned to. We cannot help it as creatives. We still put our heart and soul into it on some level. And so when we get creative direction that is not given subtly, that is not given with compassion, is not given human to human, it can really sting. So being an effective leader from that point of view means understanding how you can talk to a creative and have your feedback land. But it's also about supporting your team, understanding they're humans, understanding they're going to have challenges, pains, and difficulties. And how can you help them with those in a way that is appropriate? Once you've got the team side of things sorted out, you're going to need to start looking at, it will be your responsibility to stop client churn. And by client churn, I mean when a client takes one project from you and then goes somewhere else for projects 2, 3, 4, and so on and so on and so on. Why? You need to understand, why are the clients leaving? What happened? Was it a bad piece of work you did? Was it that a competitor's offering it cheaper? Was it that your main point of contact has left for a different company? Or someone new has come in and they already have an existing agency relationship with a competitor? What is making them leave? And then how do you fix it? How do you make the client stay? This is all part of the responsibility of a creative director. Once you've got the client staying, you need to think about maximizing your margins on each project. How can you make more but still deliver the same quality of work? There are many different ways of doing that, but you need to look at it from an authentic point of view. It is not about how can I do a job quicker to get it out the door quicker so that it costs us less and we have a higher margin on it. It's about how can I maximize what we're producing? Can I get a great case study from this? Can I get a good awards entry from this? Can we get some really good PR from this? Those are all maximizing your margin, not necessarily from a financial perspective, but making the most of every project. Once you've got all of that in place, you've got a team that's built and was working. It's a well-oiled machine. They respect you. They're listening to you and they're behind you and they know you've got their back. And your clients are staying with you and you're getting a bigger and bigger and bigger margin on more and more and more work from the same clients. That's the point where you as the creative director can go to your leadership and say, okay, I want to throw our hat in the ring and do proactive pitches to land the really big clients. I mentioned at the beginning of this deck that I've worked with 20th Century Fox and Paramount and Salesforce and Dolby and all these other amazing clients. And they all come from these tactics. They all come from being proactive and going to them, knocking on the door and saying, hey, I want to work with you. What does that take? What do you need? What can I do to show you how good I am? What can I do to start building trust with you? Once you've landed just one of those world-class clients, once you've landed just one of those really big names, how do you master organic growth through epic client management? And what I mean by organic growth is when you get one of those big clients, like one of those big clients that I mentioned to you, the first project I had with them was worth $200. It was tiny, but it was a tester. Does he do a good job? Can we trust him? And if he does, we'll give him another one that's maybe $300-400, and then it'll grow to maybe $1,000, and so on and so on and so on. So through epic client management, you master organic growth. You build authentic relationships with those clients, and you build and build and build. So it's a hugely deep role. And if you look at these, none of these are about craft. None of these are about designing something, creating something, writing something. These are all non-practitioner skills. So how do you master all of this? Well, you knew it was coming, introducing Supercharged Creative Leaders. It's a learning and development program that I launched last year that boosts and elevates professionals working in the creative industries in all of these aspects, all of the non-practitioner skills. It's an opportunity for you to have my 30 years of experience downloaded into your skill set in just 8 hours. It's not a long course, it's an intensive course. Who is it for? Well, it's for any professional working in the creative industry. Seriously, any professional. As I mentioned at the beginning, I've worked in every single creative discipline with the exception of experiential. So I know how these creative disciplines work, and I have written this program specifically to make sure it's relevant for any creative professional. Who is it for in terms of experience? I would suggest mid-weight and up. This is not something for juniors. It's for midweight and up. And it's for you to learn these valuable new skills, these non-practitioner skills. And if you know some of them already, it's for you to get refreshed on them. Plus, all of the attendees that have been through the program so far have said that it is a huge confidence booster. So if you're aspiring to be in a leadership position, or if you're already in a leadership position, this is your chance to level up to become a world-class creative director or a world-class creative leader. Those who've been through the program already, one of them won a $20 million pitch for their current agency. Another one landed a freelance creative director gig at a global online retailer 3 days after taking the program. And another one got promoted to design director after increasing efficiency through better workflows for their team. And all of them put those successes to a greater or lesser extent to attending the Supercharged Creative Leaders program. I'm incredibly proud of the people that have been through the program and the successes they've had, these ones and others. It's them that's done this. The program has given them all of the frameworks, the tools, the tips. It removes about 130 pain points and challenges, typical pain points and challenges from your day-to-day. This is what it looks like as an agenda. You'll see there's a repetition of what we talked about in terms of the non-practitioner skills. But two things that are different here in this list, the first point and the very last point. The first point about what's in the way, that's where I get to know you. That's where I get to understand what are your goals, what are your strengths, where are your areas for development. And then we can work through the program with that lens. We can understand what it is you're trying to achieve right now, what it is you want to achieve in maybe 12, 18, 24 months, what it is you want in 5 years. We can plan that. And the last part of it, putting it all into practice, is, okay, you've been through the program. What are you going to do in the next 30 days? How are we going to set you up for success with a 30-day plan that you can repeat over and over again? I'm really, really excited about this. So far, I've been doing this program one-on-one. You can still do that with me. But in June, I've got my first cohort, and I'm really, really, really excited about it. It's already starting to build out. There's some amazing people that have joined. And I would love for you guys to join if this is something that you feel would be relevant for you. It's on the 29th and 30th of June, 4 hours each day, between 4 p.m. and 8 p.m. British summertime. This is an introductory price. It's £375. It will never be this price again. To give you an indication, when you do it one-on-one with me, it's £1,295. So as a cohort, there is a significant financial saving in doing it as a group. Not only that, you also get instant accountability buddies with the other people that you join. You make connections and networks for life. But that's not all. Because Juno has a special place in my heart, I'm offering a 10% discount if you book today. All you need to do is use the code Juno. It will take 10% off. That's almost 40 quid off your attendance for June.